This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Philadelphia to Erie and from Scranton to Pittsburgh, it's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewalt, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center of Public Policy, and I'm not being joined by Mara today because we are doing a special Arnold report today. Before we go to Mr. Arnold, I just want to hope that everybody had a good Jefferson's birthday on the 13th of April, and I would ask you to go to our website of Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy and look at the two new Jefferson initiatives that we have on there, and look at our new Speakers Bureau for community organizations. Now, we are lucky today to have an Arnold report, and to do that, we have, of course, Mr. Ed Arnold back, our chairman for Susquehanna Valley Center and one of the Commonwealth's great business leaders. Ed, welcome back.
Good to see you, Charles.
Good to see you. We have some new material today, some new questions from our viewers, and I wondered if we could go ahead and tackle them. I think there's some new challenges here for you. Number one of our viewers wants to know is which investment sectors have underperformed in the last year and which have overperformed.
It's interesting, Charlie, that you said about challenges. I just want to remember that right now this is a very, very challenging year, which makes obviously predicting things very difficult because we really have four wars. We have a fair tariff adjustment, we have government spending, we have Ukraine, and we got Gaza. As you can see, two of them are domestic and two are international. Mm-hmm. Anyway, back to your question. Last year, obviously, was a very good year in the market. The S&P, which is our general guideline, was up 25%. The sectors that did extremely well were community service, which I find a little strange name, but anyway, it's people like Meta, which of course is Facebook, mm-hmm. Alpha, which of course is Google. They both changed their name. They're up. That sector was up around 40%. Vice versa, the next big performer was information technology. Again, Nvidia and Microsoft, they were up about 30%. So you can see those two are very good. That basically, tech is ruling the day. There's no question, because overall the market being up heavily, but there was a lot of stocks that were not up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The second question we have here has to do with the man from Omaha. Why has Warren Buffett been keeping more of his finances in cash at present? Should the average investor follow suit?
The answer is that, first of all, yes, he has more cash than regular. But the biggest reason is he likes to buy value mostly. And obviously, if he can undervalue stocks, he's not finding many. Most stocks are extremely fully valued, and therefore he's having trouble finding good things to invest in. Also, there has been there's a changing of the guard. Now, I'm sure it's a process, but overall the person really is a gentleman named Greg Abbott, is now the number one research and the number one person there. Buffett is still heavily involved, and I'm sure he consults, but he is not deeply in the numbers like he was at one time. He's 92 years old.
Will Abbott be superseding him completely?
Yes, that's what they expect. He's pretty much been the anointed replacement.
Okay.
As we know, Younger died a couple of years ago, and he was his right-hand man. So
okay.
He's 92. There's time to slow down.
Okay. Well, the third question we have, Ed, is how should I change my investment strategy now that Donald Trump is president once again? So in other words, they've gone from Biden to Trump, and how should the average investor change their investment strategy?
Well, basically, I'm going to say a lot of it's more of the same. We just talked about the fact that the biggest things that happened last year were technology and AI, which they're related, of course, are going to continue to rule the day. They are in a revolutionary stage. They're going to change all other businesses, but the fact remains that the real big gainers will probably be there. Though there are some new sections entering, The financials, the banks should do very well because interest rates have been coming down. And of course, Trump, who's very strong on energy, the energy companies will obviously be aggressively moving forward. They may make a little less margins, but they'll have a lot more volume. That, by the way, and one other thing on the other thing, last year, what I think I didn't mention, are areas that did not perform well were pretty much flat in a strong market. That was healthcare and also the metals. And metals, of course, be like U.S. Steel and Alcoa. Healthcare would be United Health and Pfizer. Most of the drug companies did not do particularly well.
Mm-hmm. Well, the next question is related to that question and what you were just covering. Another viewer wants to know, are there any investment areas that we should consider divesting from at the present time?
Well, again, it's somewhat, in the case of healthcare, which did not do last year, but because of the Trump's obviously aggressive thing in the way we've been running our healthcare organizations from the federal government, healthcare stocks will be under a lot of pressure. They're going to be checking for it seems to be a fair amount of information that this sloppiness, the way we handled our Medicare and Medicaid claims, the healthcare companies were doing very well because they were getting paid when they necessarily shouldn't have. And also the insurance companies will probably have a tough year. So those two industries, I would say I would look at very carefully.
Mm-hmm. Well, we had an announcement the other day from the Fed that the interest rate was going to stay the same at the present, but where will the interest rate move over the next year under President Trump?
Basically, I believe it's going to be slightly flat or maybe down. They will probably lower the rates a little bit, but not as much. And period. I just don't really see that the inflation is not going away. Yes, okay. Energy is coming down, but I'm not sure about other things.
Okay. Has your opinion on investments in silver, gold, and gems changed since the 2024 U.S. presidential election? Another viewer would like to know. They've seen you talk about these issues before, obviously.
Yes, obviously. My answer is no. I still believe that precious metals should be a part of your portfolio, that there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, and they do better now. There's no question, specifically gold, but also silver has followed it. They both are at all-time highs, and they're very, very aggressive. At the same time, they're a stable thing, and really they're reflecting inflation has eaten away the value of the dollar, and of course they're stable. Mm-hmm. I would also say maybe if you want to be a little more aggressive, you might even consider that is maybe some Bitcoins.
Okay. Well, here's a viewer with stars in their eyes. They would like to know if they marry this year, how should they change their investment strategy? What alterations would you recommend if the viewer becomes a married person?
Well, I think they should look at their whole life is going to change, and therefore their goals of what they want to do, such as will they now want to own a home, will they want to have children, and even for that matter, their risk tolerance because of all their responsibilities. So really, you've got to look at your whole thing. You just don't look at your investment portfolio.
Okay. The next question is, can you help me understand expense ratios of mutual funds or ETFs that I'm involved with?
Well, the good news is their expense ratios, their fees, are coming down substantially over the last X number of years. In fact, over the period, mutual funds average rates have gone from 0.86 fee to 0.34, which literally falls in half, which put it in perspective, if you have a $100,000 portfolio, it's now $340 of management fee, which is very modest. And again, the same good news for ETFs, and they've become more drastic. They are now, and they were higher before, that's all I can say, but now they're down to 0.09 or 0.00. There are no fees. That they are finding other ways to use their portfolio to make money, and they don't charge you. So basically, again, now in the ETF, you're talking about somewhere between $90 and no fee on your account. So both of them are basically, it's a very simple, they value your account, they, on a quarterly basis, charge that fee divided by 4, of course, it's an annual fee. Mm-hmm. And it's not a big number, very frankly. And overall, according to what I understand, and I'm not absolutely sure of this, but They claim that pretty much in the last several years, if you were to invest in a ETF, they tend to outperform mutual funds and because of the difference in fee. There's that, because they aren't that different in their performance, and of course there's no fees, or very small in the ETFs.
Okay. Well, the next viewer is looking in a different direction. The next viewer would like to ask you, what regulatory changes are there on the horizon? What regulatory changes are there on the horizon that could cause one to change one's investment strategy?
Well, the both areas, I guess, that I see that the biggest areas, and there's a lot of small regulatory changes in everything as far as power companies and so on, so it'll affect those industries. It'll just, but again, I'm hoping, and Trump's hoping, that they will pass their savings onto the consumers, so that won't necessarily they'll do way better. However, the two big areas are both energy. In the case of the oil companies and so on, because Trump is very obviously pro-drilling, therefore the oil companies will do a lot better. Vice versa, your alternative energy, your windmill companies and your solar companies are going to not get government funding, so therefore they will underperform, I would think.
Okay, let's take a break here, and we'll be right back with more of the Arnold Report, and after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, the largest, most influential municipal association in the Commonwealth. Since 1921, PSATS has been preserving and strengthening township government and securing greater visibility and involvement for townships in the state and federal political arenas. Covering 95% of Pennsylvania's land mass, townships represent 5.5 million residents, more than any other type of political subdivision in Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Welcome back to Behind the Headlines, and welcome back to this particular episode of the Arnold Report. Ed, certainly there's been a lot of discussion in Pennsylvania about the reopening of 3 Mile Island, and one of our viewers would like to know, what's the status of the reopening of 3 Mile Island nuclear plant, and how many new jobs will this reopening create?
Well, basically, on the job part, which I really question the number, but that's what it says, that direct and indirect, there's supposed to be 3,400 jobs, which is substantial.
3,400.
Now, no question, it operates 24/7. It's got to have a lot of security, and of course, I'm sure a lot of people making sure they check all the dials so it doesn't have a crisis again.
Right.
But anyway, so basically that's the job part. As far as it is presently in the process of getting permitted. Permits take a long time, even when the government wants to do something, they still move slowly. There's both federal and state permits required. So once those permits are done, and of course then there's going to be a tremendous amount of refurbishment of the plant, it's projected to be operational in 2028.
Okay. Well, the next viewer would like to know another interesting topic, and that's the topic that's been in the news quite a bit lately, and that's tariffs. This viewer wants to ask you if you think that tariffs will work to create a fair international trading system.
I think it's a fantastic that we're finally addressing this. We've been subsidizing the world since World War II, and obviously we can no longer afford to do that. We have actually, because of that, we've hollowed out our own industries because they can't compete in the world. I mean, some of the examples is that most places in the world have tremendously high tariffs on our cars. 100% is not unusual. Canada, if the car is under 40,000, it's a 60% tariff. If it's over 40,000, it's 100 to 125% tariff, which means you aren't going to do it. Now, what I found interesting, though, is that if you were to bring a German car into America that was totally manufactured in Germany, and then you import it into Canada, it's only a 6.1%. So the answer is it's all right to buy foreign cars, but not American cars. into Canada. That's just one example. Also the dairy, now there seems to be, first of all, there's tariffs, and then there's, let's say, permitting or processing or whatever you want to call it. And so theoretically, our dairy, a certain amount can get into Canada, but for some reason we aren't using that. This was negotiated by Trump his first time as president. But we never use it, so I have to assume there is enough of complicated problems that we do not pretty much sell much dairy products, whether it's cheese or milk or other derivatives thereof. So basically, and I did more research into Canada, that there's no question that they seem to have on a lot of other items around a 13% tariff. Now, it was very hard to get the nitty-gritties. It seems the internet doesn't want to talk about it. But anyway, that pretty much in the world, whether it's India or Europe, there's massive tariffs against U.S. products. So we don't try to sell there. We put plants there and manufacture there. What Trump is saying, we should manufacture here and then ship to there, which is only fair. This is going to be very challenging because it's a very complicated negotiations, and especially when it involves farmers, that everybody wants to protect their farmers. Well, obviously, we're the most efficient producer, but then there's also the thing called GMO. Europe honestly believes that GMO is bad. I mean, that's no question. That is their public policy. They don't want GMO food. Well, therefore, you could even get to the point, and this again, this is not totally scientific. Let's say we haven't shown where GMO is harmful, but yet Europe and a good part of the world believes GMO is bad. Well, therefore, if you feed your beef GMO corn, is the beef now dangerous? That's again back to this, how much level do you want to put this on? So really, there is the negotiation on free trade. Part of it's going to be farm products, where we are very competitive, but the rest of the world wants to protect their farmers. So that's just one area. Obviously, motorcycles, for some reason, most countries have over 100% tariff on motorcycles. I don't know that the Harley would have been that popular, but somehow the world wants to keep them out. There's this, whether it's Canada, whether it's Europe, whether it's India. I mean, even a funny one recently, when the whatever his title, the top person at India was visiting Trump, he said, we're going to lower your taxes on bourbon from 150% down to 100. I mean, you know, this is ridiculous. Yet we have pretty much some things we have 2.5% tariff, for some small little single-digit tariffs, or no tariffs at all, except now with India, with China, of course. Trump put on it a couple years ago. So basically.
And Biden let those stand, by the way.
And Biden left them stand. That's why they're still there. But so basically, but the other thing, of course, is going to get complicated now with tariffs. Is China is building plants in Mexico. It's going to be Mexico assembled, and therefore it would come into America tariff-free. If the cars came directly into Canada, into the United States, of course it'd have a major tariff. Oh, by the way, this is also interesting. These big tariffs I talked about on American cars to go to Canada, but there's no tariff on Chinese cars going into Canada. Which I also found. So basically there's a major discrimination against America in the world, which is why Trump was right. Unfortunately, is this going to cause some major economic uncertainty? Absolutely. And that's a negative. And he admits it, there's going to be some pain. Well, sometimes, you got to have a little pain to get to the end of the race. It hurts pretty hard to run hard. So basically, he is going to have I think, very good negotiations. And there is some rumors, I saw somewhere, that the new government, which they expect to get elected in Canada, the Conservative government has said, please don't change the tariff rules till we get elected, which is going to be, I guess the tariffs were scheduled to go in early part of April. Their election is either the later part of April or May, I'm not sure which. But if that is true, they're saying we think we can come to an agreement. So Canada, I think, assuming their government changes, will in fact work with us to have fair trade. And if they do, Mexico will probably follow, and then you're going to have more and more of the dominoes keep falling. Because if those two are biggest trading partners, because we're going to have a battle continually with China, you have to become more reasonable.
Well, the interesting thing is that the tariffs will constantly be renegotiated. It's a non-ending process, isn't it?
Well, hopefully the idea is you'd have no tariffs.
Yes.
This
yes.
is the goal, and this is where we are. We've had fair trade. We don't put tariffs on anybody else, but they put tariffs on all our stuff. That's not fair.
Right. Well, another viewer would like to know if the United States still needs the CFPB. Maybe you can tell us what the CFPB is.
It's a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It came out of the banking crisis of 2008, the Dodd-Frank bill it was called. And it basically is an overkill. That if we had enforced properly the laws that we had against the banking, and this really affects more the small banks, which lend to the small business, which lend to the individuals. It really, and that wasn't our problem in our bank crisis, it was the big banks. So this law is a very costly, unnecessary regulation, and I would make a very biased statement, since Elizabeth Warren thinks it's absolutely wonderful and she's champion of it, it can't be good. But also, they have a very strange form of funding that actually Congress has no control over them, because their money comes, I forget what the source is of the government, like from the Federal Reserve or something, and their source of income cannot be controlled by Congress. So they're really extremely independent, which I do not think is good.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another viewer would like to ask you if you could explain the implications of joint ownership or transfer on death designations.
Well, basically, joint ownership tends to be a 50-50. It doesn't have to be. And it tends to be between a husband and wife. It doesn't have to be. It can be any two individuals. The good news is, at death, there's no probate. It comes directly to you. That's good. The bad news, if you have a fight before you die and both of you are fighting over the property, neither person can sell it because you've each got a 50-50 vote. So basically, overall, in a marriage situation, you tend to hold things jointly, and then you don't have to go through probate.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And this question comes from a lot of discussion that we have across the globe right now. Would you give us an explanation that laymen can understand on what is the status of the AI war and what are the stakes? I guess the AI war with China primarily.
Well, but basically the AI, I could say the AI war almost with a lot of things, because it is going to be a revolution. This is a far greater change than anything we've ever had. I mean, what we're saying is, when AI, let's say, runs its total course, which could be very rapidly, it's moving at an alarming rate. And as you just said, one of the challenges, if we were to try to regulate it and slow it down, China's not going to slow down. Right now, there is a question mark, but we're probably in an even race right now. We're not ahead, they're not ahead. But if we slow down, they will become ahead. And again, realize that AI will control good stuff and bad stuff. The good news of AI is healthcare. It'll revolutionize healthcare, because basically right now, to bring a new drug to market, it takes a tremendous amount of time, and also you have all these people taking the test temporarily and so on. Well, under the AI, with all its massive amount of data, it'll literally do millions of calculations and figure out that this particular drug is good for you, not for me. So what we have right now is a doctor says, you've got a problem, and this is a drug that has been good for some people. So they test it. Well, if it doesn't work, and they try another drug and another. That's the way our system has to work right now, because we know what your problem is, your symptoms, but we don't know which drug will necessarily work on your system. With AI, you will have personalized medicine. It will be that detailed. It can check every of all your data points in your body, but it also checks all the other things. So basically, that is great. And there's no question, even from a standpoint of when a doctor talks to a patient, the computer will be there and instantly can tell you, well, with these problems and these symptoms, here's probably what you should prescribe. So it'll make the doctor a lot smarter. I could say it's going to dumb the doctor down. He doesn't have to be quite so sharp as he is today. So basically, healthcare, it'll be a big boom. Many jobs are going to change. I mean, there's just no question that simple jobs, the computer, literally, AI is going to go into robots. That's where they're going. And robots are going to become smarter than men. Well, eventually the robots could say they don't need us, which is a possibility. But overall, taking an example of the good news, bad news, drones. Drones are presently partially controlled by man, and partially they're computerized. They have a lot of knowledge in them, and when they say, okay, fine, shoot it, they can aim it and do it. That the person. Well, China and Russia, they're going to have the ultimate drones. The drones will make the decisions, which will be very good. They'll be smarter than man's decisions, and they'll be quicker. So now all of a sudden, if you have the AI taking over and no longer having human guidance, but literally operating on their own, and the potential is there. In fact, it's going to be. We're sure of that. It's advancing at a very rapid pace. So therefore, in the case of war, it's going to make it more sophisticated, more vicious. And for the bad guy, he's going to have an advantage. Writers. There was a major, I don't know if you remember, but there was a big strike with the writers in Hollywood. It's because their jobs are going to be eliminated. Now they're protected, so all we'll do is make our movies offshore. So they really haven't accomplished anything, because I even saw a funny article, the writers are using AI to make their job easier. So they said, studios, you can't use AI, but we want to use AI. The thing is, if you have a book and you want to make a movie out of it, AI can do that beautifully, with this as well as any writer, and so on. And the problems we're going to have in our education system now, of course, AI on a subject has all this knowledge, so a student can say, I want to write an essay on A, B, and C, and he can write a beautiful essay, and very hard for a professor to tell the difference. Right now, we suppose he can still tell the difference. In the future, it's going to eventually won't be able to. And the other thing, which is the really auditory, is if somebody speaks, it can be a totally AI-created image, such as you had the cartoons of Disney, except now you'll have real people, and you will absolutely not be able to tell the difference, because AI will create the perfect person and say whatever it wants to say.
And on that note, we will have to end this show and this edition of the Arnold Report. We thank you, Ed, for being with us today, and we hope that we'll not be replaced by AI anytime soon.
Well, hopefully not right away, but very frankly, seriously, part of the reason why corporations are doing very well these days, even as there's a shortage of personnel, because they're in small ways making their present employees smarter with AI.
Okay. Stay tuned next week for another edition of Behind the Headlines. We'll see you then.